When I'm about to buy a new bike, I usually turn to YouTube to see how other people are farkling their bikes. That'll give me a sense of what I want to do, and it'll also let me know about what I'm going to have to spend to get my bike to be just where I want it. So I'm going to share with you today how I decided to farkle my 2023 R1250GSA. Now let me throw out a disclaimer that there is no right or wrong way to farkle a bike. This is just how I decided to farkle my bike based on how I'm going to use it. Well, the GS is my long haul, not very technical riding bike. I used to have one bike that I would try to do it all on, both technical and non-technical, adventure and almost dual sport riding. And I've really decided that as I get older, that's just not for me anymore. I don't like picking up heavy bikes, and I certainly don't like picking them up when they're loaded down with gear. So I have a small KLX 300 that I use for my local technical riding, and then I have the GS for my long haul adventure riding. But as you'll see, I still farkled it out fairly aggressively because you never know what sort of situation you're going to be in, and I would rather have my bike protected. I should also mention that I purchased my bike at Eurosport in Asheville, and Eurosport offered me a 10% discount and free installation on any accessories that I bought before I took delivery on the bike. So most of these accessories that I'm about to go through with you were installed by Eurosport. I didn't have to do it myself, and I got 10% off. So I see that as a win-win. So let's take a look at what I've added to my GS Adventure. The headlights on these bikes are super expensive, and you need something in front of that headlight to protect it. There are a lot of options, but I picked the Lone Rider Headlight Guard because it has an amber lens in front of it that gives you just a little bit of a different look, which I think makes you a little bit more visible to other cars on the road. And that is also attached to a metal grate, so that gives you protection from big items like flying objects, big rocks, that sort of thing. If you don't want that in front of your headlight, if you want full throw on that headlight beam, you can actually fold that down and ride with it down. Behind that you have a clear poly or plastic headlight guard that also folds down, so you can clean behind that as well if you need to. So I really like the Lone Rider. It may be a bit on the spendy side, but I like the amber lens. I like that you can fold down the different pieces of it without having to take it apart to clean it. So that's why I chose that. I also ordered double take mirrors. I have had factory mirrors on my adventure bikes, and when I've dropped my adventure bikes, I have broken a few of those factory mirrors. So I figured why not just preempt that whole situation and get the double takes. That way, if the bike falls, which it eventually will, then the mirrors just kind of pop apart and you can put them back together rather than damaging the whole mirror and then having to ride mirrorless on one side until you can replace it. In my opinion, you can't have an adventure bike without having bark busters or some kind of handguard with a metal frame to them so that when you drop your bike, you're not going to break a lever. Another piece of advice I got from a lot of people is that the factory BMW nav units are horrible. They have like a 90% failure rate or something like that. So they advised me to go with a Garmin XT, which I already had anyway, and a locking mount by Motopumps. So basically you just take the whole BMW prep kit off the bike that's prepped for the BMW nav system. You just take that off the bike and you replace it with the Motopumps mount. It's a very clean installation. It locks. I will say it's kind of hard to get back in there behind the GPS and lock and unlock it, but I really like the way it looks. It's functionally great, and so I'm happy with that. Before you actually spend a lot of time on the bike, you really don't know how well it fits you and what sort of ergonomic tweaks you want to make. So I knew I was going to want risers because I ride standing a lot, and I ordered the BMW block handlebar risers. After spending 4,000 miles roughly on the bike, I decided that those risers kept the handlebars just a little bit too far forward, and so my lower back was getting sore. I have a bad back. So my lower back was getting sore on the longer rides because I was having to lean forward just a little bit too far. So I actually the other day just got rid of those risers and got some Rox pivoting risers. And I haven't spent a lot of time with those Rox risers yet, but I can tell you they feel a lot better to me, even on a short ride. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those Rox risers work for me on a long haul. I think they're going to work pretty good. I also got two Farkles by Machine Art Moto. The first Farkle is the X-Head cylinder guards. Now it was either get those, which they're kind of like a poly thing that bolts right to the cylinder heads, and they provide pretty comprehensive protection in case you fall and hit a sharp rock or something like that. You don't want to puncture your cylinder head. The other option, a number of manufacturers make plates that basically just bolt to the outside of the crash bars. Those are fine too. One's probably not better than the other. I just really liked the looks of the X-Heads by Machine Art Moto, so I went with those. And then the other thing I got by Machine Art Moto is the Mudsling Guard that, as the name implies, keeps mud, keeps rocks, keeps tar and things like that off of your shock and other parts of the bike. Basically, it's a more comprehensive rear fender in front of that rear wheel. So cheap insurance for me. I like it. Keeps my bike a little cleaner and probably improves the longevity of my shock as well. Now the side stand feet for the BMW GSs are tricky, as I understand it, because I believe they have a number of different side stands with different feet on them. So I ordered mine from Wunderlich. I went back on their website today and tried to find it again, and I couldn't find it. So I don't know if Wunderlich still makes it or they don't make it. I don't even remember what I paid for it. I think it was in the neighborhood of $40 or $50, which to me seems like a lot of money for a little piece of metal that just simply bolts onto the bottom of your side stand. But on the flip side, it is extremely handy when you're standing your bike up in very soft ground. So can you order some Amazon knockoffs from China? Probably, for maybe 20 bucks or something. Another vital piece of equipment for any adventure bike is a solid skid plate.
Holy that was a skid plate check there.
You never know when your bike is going to take a hard hit from underneath, whether that's a rock getting kicked up, a rock that you hit, or a log or anything else. And so it's real important to have solid protection underneath. I went with the Altrider skid plate for two reasons. One, because I like how it looks. It's real minimalistic. And then the other thing that I like about it is how it mounts to the frame and not to the motor itself. So it's worth doing your research on the skid plates. The Altrider isn't the only good one out there, but I liked it for those reasons that I just mentioned. All right, so talking luggage, I decided to go with Boomat. I have a friend who has a GS, and one of his complaints about the BMW Luggage is that the lips between where the tops of the cases and the lids meet have a very fine little groove in them that has to line up for the case to remain waterproof. If you tip the bike over and the case gets bent or anything like that, and that little fine groove doesn't line up just right, your case isn't going to be waterproof anymore. And it's a real pain in the butt to try to reform those cases once they get bent, to try to get everything just right again. The way the Boomat cases and lids line up, it's much more forgiving. So if you do tip your bike over and something gets bent, it's most likely still going to be waterproof. The side cases mount directly to the factory BMW rack. You do have to buy a special top plate for the top case to lock to the bike. And I also got the Boomat toolbox that latches to the inside of the left pannier. It's also my understanding that you can also buy Boomat soft luggage that mounts the same way, and so there's no additional mounting hardware that's needed if you decide you want their soft luggage as well. The last thing I had the dealership put on was tires, and Eurosport lets you put any tire on the bike that you want, and I had asked for Dunlop Trailmax Missions. They were back ordered at the time. They were back ordered for a few months, and so I ended up having to get something else. I ended up with the Mitas EO7 Plus Dakars. They're a fairly aggressive adventure tire. I knew I would get less distance out of them than those Dunlops, but actually for an aggressive tire, they didn't do too badly. I got almost 4,000 miles out of the first rear, and I'm on the second rear now, and I'm really happy with how they perform both on pavement and off pavement, especially their off pavement hookup. It's actually pretty darn good, so no complaints at all with these tires. If I was going to ride coast to coast or maybe up to Alaska and back, I would definitely want the Dunlops. But for the daily riding around where I live, they're actually probably the perfect tire for me. So those are the Farkles on my GS. I hope that was helpful for you. If it was, I hope you'll like the video and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.